Welcome back to your channel for healthy longevity. I'm Dr. Jonette, your longevity expert. I grew up in a Blue Zone community, and longevity is the norm for the community that I grew up in. This is a picture of my mom today at 101. Today, we are exploring another one of my pillars for healthy longevity, and that is the pillar of healthy nutrition. So let's get cooking. I am going to start with showing you how to feed your sourdough starter. We're going to be making sourdough today, and sourdough is one of the few breads that I include in a healthy diet. The reason is because that long fermentation process dissolves or eats up most of the carbohydrates in the sourdough, making it much healthier for you. I have taken out of my refrigerator my sourdough starter. It's been in there a couple of weeks and needs to get fed before we can make it into sourdough. You're going to want to weigh your sourdough starter to see how much you have. And as I pour it into the bowl here on my scale, you'll be able to see what comes out first is liquid. That liquid is actually good. It's alcohol that's produced by the fermentation process of the bacteria in the sourdough. It's what the yeast and the bacteria that keep the sourdough healthy. And having some of that alcohol on the top of it is in part what gives it its sour taste, but also helps with its nutritional value and nutritional content. I try to get as much out as I can. I'm going to be using all of this sourdough starter, about 2/3 of it for my bread and about 1/3 of it for my new batch of sourdough starter that will then go back into the refrigerator. I have here 270 grams. So I'm going to need to add equal amounts of water and flour to this 270 grams. I have unbleached organic bread flour that I use to feed my sourdough. When I make the sourdough bread, I do add additional whole grain flour to it. I'm going to zero it and add 270 grams of flour. You want to be as accurate as possible, which is why you want to use a scale and weigh your flour as well as your water. And I'm going to zero it again, and I have a bottle here of filtered water that I'm going to add 270 grams of water to it. Then I'm going to just mix all of that up. Now, once this is all mixed up, you're going to want to go ahead and cover your sourdough starter. The temperature that you want to let your sourdough starter rise at is a very warm temperature. High 70s usually is a great temperature for letting your sourdough starter rise, even as high as low 80s. So I turn the pilot light on in my oven and just cover my bowl of sourdough starter that I've fed. Put it in the oven for about 4 hours. Make sure you don't forget it's there. I've done that, by the way. And turn your oven on. It does not end well. Put it in your oven and check it maybe after a couple of hours to see how it's coming. Once it's doubled in size, it is now ready to start your sourdough. Our sourdough starter is now healthy and well fed. In the last 4 hours, it doubled in size. And as you can see, in the top of it, there's a lot of large bubbles. That tells me it's now vigorous and ready to use in making a loaf, or actually, we're going to make 2 loaves of our sourdough bread today. We'll start it today. It's going to rest in the refrigerator overnight, and then we'll finish it up tomorrow. Before we get started, though, I want to put 300 grams of our sourdough starter back into our sourdough jar, and it's going to go back into the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it again. So I'm going to just go ahead and stir it down. I like to just stir it down a little bit. You can see it's nice and puffy and full of air bubbles, perfectly fed. Such a happy sourdough starter it is. And I'm going to add 300 grams of it to my sourdough jar. I just use one of those hinged jars that you can get. It's a quart jar off of Amazon. It makes a great sourdough starter jar. Take the rubber ring off of it because you want to have not a super tight seal on your jar so that it can breathe a little bit. There we go. Exactly 300 grams. Perfect. And I'm going to close that up, put it into the refrigerator, and it's good to go until next time. Now, what I have left, I'm going to add to a mixing bowl for my mixer. I use a mixer for mixing up the sourdough bread. You don't have to, but I find that it just makes it much easier. And add all the rest of the starter to the mixing bowl. And to my sourdough starter, I'm going to add 360 grams of regular or all-purpose unbleached organic white flour. That would be like 3 cups worth. And in addition to that, I'm going to add some whole grain blend. This is a blend of 9 whole grains. You can use all-purpose flour if you want. I wouldn't use more than about 2 cups, which is 240 grams of your whole grain flour. I've never used more than a couple of cups. It's about 3 cups of all-purpose to 2 cups of whatever whole grain flour you want to use is what I seems to work for me the best when I make my sourdough. I've never tried 100% all-purpose flour. If you do give it a try, go for it. And let me know in the comments how it turns out for you. So we're adding 2 cups. We're not going to add the salt yet, 2.5 teaspoons. Instead, I'm going to add the water next, and we're going to mix this all together and let it rest. Make sure that bowl's locked in place. I let it mix for a couple of minutes, I guess, and this looks like it's a little bit too sticky still. So that was 1.75 cups of water I added. I'm going to add a little more flour to that, probably about 1/2 cup or so. We'll leave that here in case we need any more. You want it soft and tacky, but not super sticky. The amount of flour you need will depend upon what time of season it is. During more humid months, your flour has more water, and during your drier months, your flour, of course, is drier. So you're going to not use as much flour in the wintertime as you do in the summertime, typically. Up here in New York, the summer is very humid, so it has been fairly high humidity, and my flour is well hydrated. That looks pretty good. We're going to just let that rest a bit. So our 20 minutes is up, and I'm going to take the dough off of the mixer and put it out on my board here so that I can add the salt to it. Add a little flour to the board. And go ahead and get the dough out of the bowl. And I just sprinkle the salt over the flour. A little bit over there. We need to make sure we get in. And then just start kneading it until you get the dough all incorporated, flour all incorporated into your dough. You probably don't need that much flour. And I'll sprinkle a little flour on the base of the bowl there. And just put the nice, soft, well-kneaded dough back into the bowl. And I'm going to let this rise for 1 hour. At the end of the 1 hour, it's going to go in the refrigerator overnight. And then tomorrow morning, we'll take it back out and continue making our sourdough bread. After the dough is sat in the fridge overnight, take it out about an hour before you're ready to start working with it. I took this out about an hour ago and actually put it in the oven next to the pilot light and let it warm up to room temperature. It's now still a little on the cool side, but close to room temperature. I'm going to go ahead and take it out of, you'll want to go ahead and take it out of your bowl and lightly flour. It's a little more than lightly floured, but flour your work surface with some flour. And you can use anything to get it out of the bowl. Bowl scraper or bench scraper works great. Or just pull it out with your hands. And you're going to do a couple of what I call envelope folds. Lightly flour your hands, and you can use your bowl scraper to help you fold it because the dough is going to be fairly soft and sticky at this point. And you're going to want to fold the bottom part up and gently press it down, the top part down, just like an envelope. And then use your bench scraper to help you turn it, and repeat that one more time. Bottom part up, top part down. And I flip it over. Make sure there's some flour under it, and when your 20 minutes are up, go ahead, uncover your dough and split it into 2 equal pieces or thereabouts. You're going to then go ahead and just gently shape each one of those pieces into a round. Get a little flour here. I usually flip it over and just kind of pull in, pull up and in all the edges. Keep turning it until you've got it into a round shape. After your 20 minutes are up, go ahead and uncover your 2 rounds. These I put a little close together and they look like they may be stuck a little bit, but that's okay. We can get them apart. And you'll notice I have a couple of additional things I've added here to our work area. I have a banneton, or round wicker type bowl that is designed for baking loaves of bread in it. I use flour it a little bit. We'll set that aside. If you don't have a banneton, now the banneton comes with another cloth, which I love, and I put that in just a mixing bowl and then flour it a little bit as well. If you don't have the banneton and the cloth insert, go ahead and just use a towel in a mixing bowl. That works fine. Or you can just leave it as a free form on your work surface. Any of those work fine. You're going to want to then take your round loaves of dough here and I usually give them one more little dusting of flour and shape them up just a little bit more. And they go upside down, or in other words, with the seam side up, right into your bowl. You're going to let them sit in there or rest in there and rise for 3.5 hours. And then you can cover them with either a piece of plastic wrap or a tea towel and set them aside for 3.5 hours. About 1 hour before the 3.5 hours is up, you are going to want to preheat your oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And you'll put into your oven 2 Dutch ovens and heat those also along with the oven. You want them to also be 500 degrees at the time you're going to put your sourdough bread into your oven. If you don't have Dutch ovens, not a problem. Put a ceramic stone in your oven that's big enough to bake the 2 loaves of bread, or alternately an oven steel. If you go to my website at growwithdrjonette.com and click on the shop button, you'll be able to find links for the Dutch ovens as well as the oven steel or the oven ceramic, all on my website that you can purchase. These are what I recommend for making sourdough bread. Our 3.5 hours is up and our sourdough is nice and puffy. So now it's time to go ahead and get it into the oven. I have a piece of parchment here that I'm going to put over top of it, and I'm going to get my preheated Dutch oven out of this 500-degree oven here. It is hot, so be careful you don't burn yourself during this process. I want to put this back here. Easier. Have something to flip it onto here. And then you want to slash whatever design you're going to put on it. You can do a couple of, I like to do a little square. A little bit deeper there. And then gently use your parchment paper to lower it into your Dutch oven. Put your cover of your Dutch oven back on it, and it goes back into the oven that was preheated. And repeat the process for your other loaf. And simply flip it over. Take the cloth off of it this time, or if you have a dish towel, cut a design in it. And lower it into your Dutch oven. Lid on. So you are going to bake your sourdough loaf for 30 minutes at that 500-degree temperature. Then reduce the temperature to 400 degrees. Take the cover off of that Dutch oven and bake your bread another 10 minutes. After that, you want to take your bread out of the Dutch oven, just set it on the oven shelf and bake an additional 5 minutes to let it just nicely crisp up that crust. And you'll be done. While our bread is baking, let's talk about the nutrition of sourdough and why sourdough is one of those healthier breads for you, especially when you make it with a significant amount of whole grains like we did today. Some of the whole grains that were in our bread today we used, of course, whole wheat, but also I had barley, rye, sorghum, teff, quinoa, oat, and amaranth flour. The reason that sourdough is better for you, and also it's the same reason that your sourdough keeps longer, is because that long fermentation process autolyses the gluten or digests the gluten. Another reason why some people who are gluten intolerant but not gluten allergic are able to eat sourdough as one of the few types of breads that they can eat, because the long fermentation of the yeast and the bacteria with the starter have already auto-digested a lot of the gluten and broken it down, which also means that the carbohydrate content of your sourdough bread is much lower. This is healthier for your gut, better for your body, easier to digest, better for digestion, and it also gives your sourdough bread a longer shelf life. Our bread is baked and now they're ready to come out. So let's see how they came out. They look marvelous, nice and hollow sounding, which is what you want. Very crispy crust. Look at that lovely design on them. I'm sure your bread came out as beautiful, lovely, and delicious as these loaves here. And I know that you're going to want to give them a try and use them for sandwiches, toast, and so much more. Just a quick reminder, if you didn't have a Dutch oven to bake your bread in, go to my website at growwithdrjonette.com and search for my sourdough bread recipe. I have their detailed instructions on how to bake your loaf of sourdough bread if you don't have a Dutch oven. It's important to check out that recipe because the baking times are different, the temperature is different, and the process of how you bake it to get a nice crispy crust on it is also different than if you have a Dutch oven. So make sure you head over there and check it out as well. Thank you also for subscribing, clicking that like button, and signing up for notifications. I post new videos on healthy longevity every week and several shorts every day. You aren't going to want to miss any of them in your longevity journey. In addition to this recipe on my website, growwithdrjonette.com, there are so many more healthy recipes for you to explore, enjoy, as well as lots of health-related longevity information. And we'll see you next time on your channel for health and longevity.